Hey Mysterions, I'm Shay.
And I'm Jen.
And this is
Crimes, Cryptids, and Controversies. This is a weekly true crime and paranormal podcast where we work our butts off to surprise one another and our Mysterions each week with new knowledge. Sometimes we get excited and post more than once a week, so don't forget to subscribe and keep up with our random episodes. With that being said, let's explore.
On September 17th, 2009, just after 3 p.m., the four bodies belonging to Mark Niederbrock, Debra S. Kelley, and their daughter Emma Niederbrock were all found with Emma's friend, Melanie Wells, bludgeoned to death at the Niederbrock home at 505 First Avenue in Farmville, Virginia. The bodies were discovered only 3 days after Emma, Melanie, and an online friend named Richard had all gone to a Horrorcore concert. It seemed like such a random slang, but upon further investigation, the shaky rationale became super obvious.
But first, Newsbreak! There's a 30-year-old Virginia woman named Dorothy Clements who has now been charged with murder in connection to the death of her 4-year-old son, who suffered a, quote, medical emergency at his home in Spotsylvania.
Probably.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Virginia, on May 6th, 2022. 2 days after the incident happened, the boy died in the hospital from his injuries. So the mother was charged with 1 count of felony murder and 1 count of child neglect. Upon further investigation into the case, it was determined that the child's toxicity level showed a high level of THC, which obviously came from his mother's THC gummies. During the investigation, detectives alleged that Clement's statement did not match evidence seized from the home. It's believed that had his mother acted more quickly, the boy's life could have been saved. And as usual, we'll update you as the story develops, and we will leave a link to the article below in the show notes. Oh, this is just a really sad, unfortunate event because...
Yeah. And it's very short and quick and brief because there's not a lot of information about it, but I just thought that that was an interesting and unfortunate reminder to please lock up your delicious looking weed candies because they look yummy, and I would also mow through an entire pack given the opportunity. So
as a child, a 4-year-old especially.
Yeah. I was like, no, as a 30-year-old adult, I would.
Yeah, so as this develops, I'm sure there's a lot more that's going to come up, and we'll keep you guys updated on how this ends. I'm very curious myself as to how long she waited before she took him to the hospital and exactly what symptoms the child was showing, because every child is different. So, I mean, we can't run to the ER every second. So it's very interesting. Now into Shay's story.
All right, today we're going to be talking about the Farmville Murders. I guess the first section, we're just going to go over the main players in this. So first we have Melanie Wells, who was a really unfortunate and innocent bystander who just so happened to be caught in the crossfire of this. She was an 18-year-old girl and was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, but ended up moving with her family to West Virginia when she was in high school. The family had made the decision to allow Melanie to complete her high school diploma at home because the move was just a really big adjustment for her, and she was described as a sweet and friendly girl who loved music. And Melanie and Emma had actually met online, and the two became good friends because they shared an interest in all things horrorcore. When Emma knew she was going to a concert in Michigan, she invited Melanie to join the group, so that's how Melanie got intertwined into this chaos.
Okay.
Next, we mentioned her already. Emma Niederbrock. So, she was born October 15th, 1992 to parents Mark Niederbrock and Debra Kelley in Champaign, Illinois. At some point during her childhood, the family moved to Farmville, so not the game. Before we recorded, Jen's like, what the fuck? Did they kill someone over the game Farmville? And I'm like, no, we'll get there.
I totally was like, oh my goodness.
Farmville gets really intense. Yeah. No. Debra was a professor in sociology and criminal justice at Longwood University in Farmville, and Mark began serving as a pastor at Walker's Presbyterian Church in Hicksburg in 2003. Emma had been homeschooled like Melanie since middle school, and she was known to be going through that teenage phase where she was into some darker things like the occult, macabre music, but she also had this altar where she was super preppy when it came to listening to stuff like Backstreet Boys, playing soccer, and just being kind of that jock girly girl type thing.
Yeah.
She had dreamed of becoming a fashion designer and was fond of modeling her creations to her family. And fancied herself something of a goth. So her general getup was like the black, dyed hair with a bright pink, kind of a bad bitch, kind of would have loved to have been her friend. In order to connect with other people that shared her interest in music and goth culture, she created multiple online accounts and ended up taking up the screen name Ragdoll.
That's interesting. Mine
used to be Shipwreck Shay. Because we used to do the alliteration. I remember one was Patrick Paradox was one of my friends, and like Batty Brittany or something. It was so cringy. But
kid stuff.
Oh, MySpace. Mm-hmm. Not only was she able to connect with her friend Melanie online, but that's where she also struck up a friendship with a man named Richard Samuel McCroskey III.
That's a mouthful.
He was born on December 26th, 1988 in Haywood, California, where he lived with his parents and older sister Sarah. And she was actually once quoted as saying, quote, "We weren't like a Leave It to Beaver type of family," unquote.
Wow.
Yeah, that'll give you some indicator of what's to come. In 2003, the McCroskey family moved to Castro Valley, California, just 3 miles north of Hayward. Richard took it really, really hard when his dad asked his mom to move out of the family home, and school wasn't making his life any easier because it was just a generally miserable place for him since he was a little chubby redhead.
Oh, I can relate.
Yeah, well, don't give him too much empathy.
Definitely a little chubby redhead growing up.
Yeah, but you were a cute little redhead. He is a bit of a demon.
Oh.
His sister Sarah described him personality-wise as just being really passive and someone who rarely stood up for himself unless he was seriously provoked, which wound up with him going to 2 high schools from getting kicked out before he eventually dropped out. He lacked any sort of confidence in person because of the bullying, and now that he wasn't in school, making friends with kids his age was just that much more difficult. Luckily, he was born into the age of the internet, and like Emma and Melanie, he found the social media site MySpace to escape from the cruelty.
Wow, MySpace. I remember. That was like my first experiment.
With HTML coding?
Oh my, and getting your music on there. Oh.
There used to be an app called Meet Me, where I would always meet people from online, and it would rank you by state, like who was the most, I guess, talked to and commented on in that state. Wow. And I was number 1.
Wow, I am not surprised.
I would post a lot of Eminem lyrics without context, and people would be like, "Ooh," and I'd be like, "Hey, that's a song," and I'd just like troll the shit out of everyone. I was a very needy teenager. So if anyone saw Shay from Beat Me in Arizona, 'twas I. My friend Dan was number 2. We constantly competed, and he went to my school, and we were always like in class, like updating our Meet Me profile.
Wow.
Anyway. Where was I? Richard is a dick.
It wasn't long before he started dabbling.
Oh, thank you. It wasn't long before he started dabbling in music production, and specifically horrorcore. So I kind of had a vague idea of what horrorcore was because my cousin was super into ICP, Insane Clown Posse. I could not think of their name. But there's an actual definition. I found this on Wikipedia. Quote, "Horrorcore is based on horror-themed and often darkly transgressive lyrical content and imagery. Its origins derived from certain hardcore hip-hop and gangsta rap artists." I'm so sorry, they definitely said it as Gangsta, which began to incorporate supernatural, occult, or psychological horror themes into their lyrics. Unlike most hardcore hip-hop and gangster rap artists, horrorcore artists often push the violent content and imagery in their lyrics beyond the point of realistic urban violence, to the point where their violent lyrics become gruesome, ghoulish, unsettling, or slasher film or splatter film-esque. Unquote.
I just want to know if you can say horrorcore and hardcore and hip-hop and all that 10 times really fast again, because that was kind of funny.
I know. I was very close to saying horrorcore all the time, and I was like, no. I remember there was an ICP album, I think it was called The Great Melanco, and there was a song, maybe on that album, it was called The Dating Game and then My Couch, and I was obsessed with those songs. I knew every word to the Dating Game one. I was going through a phase, all right?
I'm sure.
He uploaded some of his custom music on MySpace under the name SykoSam, and he began posting his own original content and making friends with other horrorcore fans and rappers. He really enjoyed writing his own lyrics, and one song called My Dark Side said, quote, "You're not the first, just to let you know. I've killed many people and I kill them real slow. It's the best feeling watching their last breath, stabbing and stabbing till there's nothing left," unquote.
Okay.
Okay, Shakespeare, go off. Like, shut up. You be quiet.
That is just too far.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard lots of things, but that's the first time I've heard that one, and that's too much.
Oh, don't listen to horrorcore then. It's really bad.
I almost feel like you have to imagine those scenes to be able to put those words.
So we kind of get to a point about the possibility of putting not judgment, but blame on the horrorcore genre in and of itself. I have a full section devoted to that because I have some strong opinions about it.
I can see that both ways. Already in my brain, I can see both sides. I can see my logical side, and I can see my mother's side. I can see a kid's side.
It's very divisive.
Of course, with everything we started with what? Oh, video games are going to hurt everybody. And then it was the internet came and all kids are going to die now from it.
Don't talk to strangers. Every generation has its quirk.
Yes.
To put it lightly.
Now we're going to talk about when Emma met Richard, also known as Sam. Being that all three teens were part of the same relatively small niche, they inevitably ended up intertwining in each other's lives.
It's niche. I wasn't going to let you get that far without
That's
being
good
like,
because I never used that word.
Go ahead, sorry.
It looked like niche to me.
It does. You know what? Phonetically, it looks like niche. So I get it.
But it could be either. Okay.
It's okay.
Being that all three teens were part of the same relatively small niche, they inevitably ended up intertwining in each other's lives. And then in September of 2008, Emma, who was 15 at the time, Syko Sam was 19 at the time.
A grown-ass adult.
Struck up a bond online and over the phone.
Okay, so I put a pause for discussion very specifically. Yeah, I do remember being 15 and talking to 19-year-olds and thinking I was the coolest bitch on the planet. And now looking back, I'm like, ugh, I'm 30 and I can't imagine being 19 and talking to a 15-year-old. Like, something about that just feels really icky. But I remember, like, being a freshman and girls being like, I'm dating a senior. And at the time, it's like, oh my God, Jessica, what a score. But now I look back and I'm like, they were damn near legally an adult and you were like 12.
I feel the same way. I mean, and we grew up in totally different spaces and I also have children. So it's the same exact thing over and over again. I feel like the girls mentally develop faster, the boys mentally develop slower, and then we have this issue that jumbles usually the 15 to 20-year-olds, and it's a very difficult thing on the boys' side too when their mentality is a few years younger and the 15-year-old girls a few years ahead. They're quite frankly mentally on the same page, but their ages aren't, and you have to draw the line somewhere. It's a tough one.
Anyway, sorry, that was my gentle pause I put in for that because I was like, interesting. But I do remember being that girl, so I'm not shaming anybody.
I think we all go through that. It's, attention and...
Yeah.
So, Sam was known to have been immature and looked young for his age. Well, here this explains it, which made the optics of the age gap almost imperceivable. Like Richard, Emma would spend time listening to horrorcore music and would scope out upcoming horrorcore music festivals. At the beginning of 2009, Mark and Debra divorced. Emma stayed in the family home with her mother, and her father moved out. And by the summer of 2009, Richard's parents split up also, only further cementing their bond over their mutual distress from similar situations. By September of 2009, the now 16-year-old Emma and 20-year-old Richard had been chatting either online or on the phone daily for almost a year, and by all accounts seemed very close even though they had not spent any time in person. Richard took the relationship much more seriously than Emma, as he was under the impression that the two were in an exclusive relationship. Emma made a point of sending affectionate messages, but didn't seem as interested. However, Richard didn't seem to realize that Emma was just a flirty girl, and her affection did not actually translate to an exclusive relationship.
Yeah, I did that a lot. I had a lot of online boyfriends. I'm like, no, baby, it's just you. To 20 guys.
Yeah.
I needed attention, okay?
You were just a catfisher.
Oh, I so was. The amount of times I lifted the boobies up to the chin, I was like, oh my God, look at
your parents had their hands full.
Yeah, and I'm sure they knew what was going on, but they were like, fuck it, we can't stop her. Because I would literally just make alias accounts, like, all the time. I actually had an obsession with the name Emma, so it's funny because I'm like, wow, I really relate to this girl. And I used to take the name Emma Smith all the time as my name.
All right, well, let's talk about this horrorcore festival called Strictly for the Wicked.
Yes.
Emma and her best friend Melanie Wells were on MySpace in early September of 2009, and they found out about an all-day horrorcore festival called Strictly for the Wicked on September 12, 2009 in Southgate, Michigan. Emma and Melanie, who lived in Inwood, West Virginia, about 3.5 hours from Farmville, had been to many of these festivals before and always had a great time. Emma and Richard figured that this public festival would be the perfect opportunity to meet in person, especially considering that she had met Melanie in person and it ended up being a best friendship. Emma's parents were understandably apprehensive about their 16-year-old daughter meeting up at a festival with a 20-year-old man she had only ever spoken to on the phone and who also shared their daughter's dark affinities. I have a question.
Yes.
Did this 16-year-old actually tell her parents she wanted to go meet a 20-year-old man at a festival?
Mm-hmm.
Impressive.
Yeah, well, so remember how her mom worked in sociology and stuff? So I was reading a bunch of kind of shitty articles that blamed her parents and were like, they should have done this, that, and the other thing. But then I read a few other articles that were from people who seemed to understand the parents' perspective of, okay, she's clearly acting out and she's either going to go with our consent and us there driving her and making sure she's safe, or she's going to sneak out, get on a Greyhound, and probably kidnapped. So let's just go ahead and not necessarily encourage this, but support it so that way she doesn't feel isolated, alienated, and like she needs to run away.
Yeah, that's a tough place. You know, I have a daughter who's grown, so I totally get it on both sides. You want to tell them no, but you can only hope that at 16 she's learned enough to make those good decisions when she meets a 20-year-old boy, and that's all you can do is guide.
Yeah, guide and trust and hope for the best.
Yeah, and just be there. But I was actually wondering, because I guess most 16-year-olds do not tell their parents, hey, by the way, mom and dad, I want to go meet up with a 20-year-old guy. Are you guys good with that? Okay, check, bye.
I thought that too, but then when I was looking into it, I realized like they seem to have a really close bond.
As any parent of any rebellious teenager would know, Deb and Mark were stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, they were very supportive and open-minded people who were fully aware that a part of growing up meant dabbling in things that they as adults may not understand or would see as super safe. But tolerance could only be extended so far, and they were afraid that if they were to crack down on Emma's new scary interest, their daughter could very well lash out with immature teenage retaliation. So the couple, who were in the final stages of divorcing, decided that it would be in everybody's best interest to pull together and protect their daughter, and agreed to not only allow Richard to stay with them during the duration of the concert and a few days after, but they would also drive the teens to the festival, assuming that he bought his own plane tickets. And I have to say, like, as a parent, that is probably, if I gave in, what I would do, because he's in my house and my daughter's not in some hotel or something, so I could see that. But
it's very reasonable.
Yeah, and I'm super impressed that they're going through a divorce and they're talking enough to...
They seemed like really good people and parents.
Yeah, I mean, like...
They were just raising a very outspoken and artistic, creative child is all.
Well, it sounds like they did encourage that in her.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, Emma's excitement was evident, considering that some of the last messages she posted on MySpace were in anticipation of Richard coming to town. So a few days later, Emma and her mom drove to the Richmond airport to pick up McCroskey, and at first, the nerves and excitement of the initial meeting meant that Emma and Richard started strong. However, it didn't take long before the truth reared its ugly head. Richard turned out to be almost the complete opposite of his online persona that had drawn Emma to him. She rightfully expected a man who was more aligned with the horrorcore music that they listened to and the more abrasive and badass raps that he wrote. In reality, he was vulnerable, needy, and wore his heart on his sleeve. He struck a lot of people as someone who didn't really need to be physically attracted to the woman. He would settle for reciprocated emotions, which really only intensified his insecure and clinging nature. Emma wasn't that interested in the needy vibe, and she quickly pulled back, and I assume felt some sort of betrayal enough that caused her to become pretty aloof only a little while after their first in-person meetup. And I feel like her parents were hoping for this. Like, they obviously tried to raise a strong, girl who could make her own decisions, which is kind of what I hinted to earlier. Like, they probably felt like we need to trust her that she can make this good decision. And obviously they did something right. Yeah. Because she knew that that wasn't right, that he put himself out to be somebody who he's not.
Exactly.
Emma allegedly told Melanie that Richard was not nearly as cool and tough as he'd portrayed himself online. Just based on his general lack of self-esteem, Richard took his rejection horribly. It seemed like he had hyped the meeting up in his head, and now he felt that Emma and Melanie were spending their time talking shit about him just out of earshot, leaving him to sulk on the outskirts of things, and now he was stuck hundreds of miles from home. This is all before they even left for the festival, and things only got worse for Richard once they arrived. Richard was pissed that Emma spent her time at the event flirting with other men and avoiding him. So Richard decided he was going to go off to sulk in the corner. So Richard ran off to sulk in the corner for real? Like, is that real?
Like a little bitch baby.
He should have just presented that, because there are plenty of girls out there who love
That's
needy boys who will
soft,
hang all over them and I need you like a little puppy. Like, there's plenty of girls who like that. But if you put yourself out the opposite, what did you expect?
Yeah, I'm like, you can't be a bad bitch and then a marshmallow in person. Stop it.
Go after the right girl.
Yeah. Okay, so the gang goes home from the Horrorcore concert. Do you love how I couldn't figure out the word? I almost said from the Syko Sam concert.
You're stuttering there.
The Today Junior. The festival ended at 11 p.m. on September 12th, and the next day, on the 13th, Emma, Melanie, Richard, and Emma's parents drove back to Farmville from Michigan. At 2:43 on Monday, September 14th, Melanie posted her last update on her MySpace page that said, quote, SFTW, standing for Strictly for the Wicked, was fucking amazing. Back in Virginia now. Be back in West Virginia on Wednesday. I miss everyone, unquote. It wasn't long after that everybody finally fell asleep. Everyone except Richard. In the early hours of September 15th, 2009, he decided to act on his rage and, while everybody else slept, took a ball-peen hammer to the heads of Emma, Melanie, and Debra Kelley.
What?
Yep, that's what I'm saying. Everyone but Emma was in the crossfire of this dumb shit, and she was just a poor girl trying to find a nice guy. None of them awoke during their attacks based on autopsy evidence. There were no defensive wounds found on the bodies. During later interviews, Richard would explicitly state that his motivation for the murders was his rage toward Emma for rejecting him at the music festival.
Okay, so wait, I'm sorry. I gotta interrupt here, Shay.
No,
so he's 20 years old.
Uh-huh.
He misrepresents himself, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows this girl is 16.
Yep.
So she's, not even close to his age yet. And
Nope.
the parents let him stay in their home and even drive him at 20 years old to this festival. And Emma is 16 and pissed off that he lied about who he is. So
As she should be pissed, yeah.
And at 20 years old, I'm not talking about a 16-year-old here. At 20 years old, being mad, he couldn't simply walk out the door and leave in the middle of the night. He had to kill them instead of just, I'm leaving. I'm just going to walk out the door.
And we'll see, he knows how to call a fucking taxi. He had his faculties. He was just being a brat. That's a gentle way of saying what I really would love to say.
This is so ridiculous.
That's why I was so fascinated by this. I was like, yeah, we're talking about this.
Mm.
Mark, Debra, and Melanie really truly were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Richard had been drinking and smoking weed and was dwelling on his anger until it boiled over. Don't smoke and drink when you're mad, people. It's like, don't drive angry. Like, just...
Or get out of the house and go do it in a hotel room or go do it at your own home.
And then just stay the fuck away from the house. To add insult to injury, Richard had decided to hang out around the house until his flight back home, doing God knows what. All the while, Melanie's mom is naturally freaking out, certain that something is wrong because Melanie was uncharacteristically inactive on MySpace and wasn't answering any of their attempts to contact her. Thomas and Kathleen Wells continued to try and reach their daughter, but when they weren't successful by Wednesday, September 16th, when Melanie was due to come home, Thomas drove 200 miles from Inwood, West Virginia to Farmville. Thomas went to the Niederbrock home and knocked on the door, but nobody answered. So he tried a few more times and then waited in his car for upwards of 7 hours, just waiting for someone to come or go from the house so that way he could interact with them and figure out what the fuck was going on. Eventually, he just kind of convinced himself, like, okay, they must have gone out for the day. They're all on vacation. Melanie's distracted. It's fine. Let me just go home.
Yeah, that would be reasonable thoughts.
Yeah,
like, okay,
exactly.
The girls must have just went somewhere and I'm overthinking it.
Yeah, because you don't want to assume that something's wrong like that, I get it. Like I said, Thomas ended up going home and tried to just write it off as, okay, they're busy, girls' day, so fun, everyone's distracted. But he could not shake the feeling that something was wrong because it was just so uncharacteristic.
He had that father's intuition.
Yeah, exactly. Once Thomas returned home without their child, Kathleen naturally became very frantic and started reaching out to anybody who could know where their daughter was. Despite the answering machine that she always got, she continued to call Emma's house phone as well. Kathleen continued to dig in an attempt to find her daughter, and she was actually able to find the contact information for a man named Andre Shim, who was the owner of a small independent record label called Serial Killin' Records, and he was the organizer for Strictly for the Wicked Festival.
Wow.
Like, Kathleen's on a fucking mission. God bless Mama Bears.
When it's your child, yeah.
I know. You do it for fun. You're like, hey, I found this thing, and I'm like, well, Jesus.
That's because I've had children, and my daughter made me a pro.
Yeah, I bet she did. And now it's our job.
That's it.
Andre told Kathleen that he had seen all 3 teenagers at the festival and that they had gone home with Emma's parents when the event ended, but he wasn't sure really like anything else that happened outside of that. But he did say that he would follow up with Kathleen if he could figure out anything else.
That was really nice.
Unassuaged, she continued her mission, once again calling Emma's house. This time, she was shook because someone actually ended up answering the phone. 3 guesses as to who. First 2 are wrong. Richard.
Yeah, that's...
Yep.
Wait, I am confused. I thought he left.
No, he's in the house with the bodies. He's been chilling here since the 15th when he bludgeoned everybody to death.
But I thought he...
No, he killed them and then hung out. Oh, it's in the notes. It's just really fucked up, so you wouldn't really think about it and would just assume that he left.
I don't even understand. What? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we're on the next day, right? Like, we're not even close to the time that he did it.
Yeah, this is the next day.
Like, the
next night.
Enough time for anybody at all to be like, I better get out of here.
Yeah, you would think. But this kid is fucked up in the head.
But so is the father not there because they were getting divorced?
Yeah, so we'll get to him too, because don't forget, I said that there are 4 deaths.
Okay, let me hold my
questions. We only talked about 3. Yes. Questions held to the end, bam. So, Richard answers the phone, right? And Kathleen takes this opportunity to be like, where the fuck is my daughter? But Richard goes, anyway, how's the weather? And just like beats around the bush.
Wow.
This was obviously incredibly frustrating to Kathleen because she could sense that Richard was full of crap. Fed up, Kathleen called the Farmville Police Department on Thursday, September 17th. This is 5, 6, 7. Yep, okay, I know math. 2 days later to request a welfare check. Hold on to your butt cheeks because you're about to get super fucking annoyed. The police knocked on the door and Richard answered. He told them that Emma, Melanie, and Debra were all at the movies. That was good enough for the cops, who took that answer at face value and bailed.
No, I can't. I just can't. Because this girl is Melanie. She's how old? 16, 17?
Yeah.
That's more than a welfare check for a minor. You're talking about a minor. If you would have been talking about a 19 or 20-year-old, I get what this cop did. But when it's a minor and it's been 2 days since the parents have heard from the child, and that's not a good enough answer.
Yeah, some random guy answers, not one of the parents. Like, you shove his ass out of the way and get in there and figure out what the hell that smell is.
Or
because
you
it's
ask
been
the
2
court
days.
for a search warrant because a minor has been missing for 2 years and he could be an adult
you
harboring.
Just said 2 years. It's 2 days. Chill.
2 days. Well, my goodness. 2 days feels like 2 years for any parent like that situation.
Fuck, dude.
But
seriously.
if he's an adult, he could be harboring a minor or anything. Like, he could be doing anything to this girl.
Yeah.
Could have kidnapped her or anything.
Point is, a simple, hey, you good? Okay, great, bye. I'm gonna head out is not good enough. One of the main sources that I found for the research was on the blog for a podcast that was super helpful called Talk Murder With Me, and she posed an excellent question that says, why was there no further investigation? I assume that Kathleen would have told them the most important parts of the story, that Melanie was supposed to be home 2 days ago, but she had not heard anything from her, nor has she heard from Emma or Debra, despite multiple attempts to get in touch, unquote.
That's basically what I just
Exactly.
said. Like, I am appalled.
Yeah, like, how could they?
I'm sure Kathleen said, this is my daughter who's underage, and she's been gone for 2 days, and this is not normal, and not just the daughter. So even if they wanted to kiss it off to a teenager running away, which is normally what they do.
Right.
The other 2 are missing. The parents.
Yeah, it's very suspicious. Because the cops did nothing to help, Kathleen reached out to Mark Niederbrock around 5 p.m. that same day and asked him to check on Melanie and his family because they were all basically MIA at this point. Luckily, Mark only lived about 20 minutes away in Pamplin, Virginia, and assured Kathleen that he would go there, call her back, and all of that once he verified that Melanie was good, and he was pretty much confident in the fact that everything was fine. Maybe their friends all died or something. Mark dropped by the house on his way to a meeting in Richmond and was met at the door by Richard. Nothing really has been confirmed because Richard really doesn't feel like opening up about this segment, and basically what happened leading up to the attack is just fully a mystery. But it was clear based on his autopsy that Mark had tried to defend himself against the blows of an 8-pound wood-splitting maul.
What?
Mark was not able to fight off Richard for long, and he ended up on the floor where Richard pummeled his head and face. It has been reported that the attack was so vicious that the hardwood flooring beneath Mark's head had been damaged and soaked through with blood.
That's insane.
I might have written it down later, but the cops on this case literally won't talk about it because it was so traumatic for them to walk in on and so like damaging to the friggin' psyche that they were like, okay.
What are we, on day 3? I hate to say this, but those bodies are rigor mortis and smelling probably by now. Blood everywhere. That blood has a nasty smell after it sits for a while.
So there's just visually, physically, everything. All your senses are just so overwhelmed that, in the police report, they're basically like, it was super bad. Everyone's dead. The end. Like, they didn't want to go into detail. When later interviewed, Richard said that he specifically chose the maul to kill Mark because he thought that the weight of it meant that he wouldn't suffer. But then, tell me why the fuck you smashed his face straight up into the ground, multiple times. That sounds fake.
What anger or rage did he have towards this father? He didn't do anything.
I have no idea.
Even the mother, they invited the guy into their home.
His only real reason, quote unquote, that I could ever find was leave no witnesses. And I'm like, you fucking asshole. He wasn't a witness, he was, and he probably would have known it was you, but leave him alone, Jesus.
I don't think witnesses matter at this point.
Yeah, no, you kind of killed 3 people already, bud. Stop. Then he spent time dragging Melanie's body into Emma's room and said that he tried to, quote, clean up the den, and then he went on to record a video of himself. I watched the video, and it is so fucking annoying. Because he talks like this, and I'm so sorry to my family. Oh my god, I'm shaking right now.
Are you serious?
Yes, dead ass. I will show you the video when we're done.
Well, that really, vibes well with taking a ball-peen pen to somebody's skull.
But he's the victim. Yeah,
okay.
I'm gonna have to post an audio clip on here of how it sounds.
Yeah, I want to hear that.
It's fucking stupid.
Alright, so I'm making this video because, or if anybody finds this, I really don't know what I'm trying to say, and I'm breathtaking at what I've done, and I apologize. I know I'm gonna pay for my consequences. I wish that I could have not done this, but I just lost my mind. I snapped, and I did what I did, and I gotta pay for it now. My consequences. I'm all shaky and stuff, but to anybody that finds this, tell my parents that I love them, and I'm very sorry for doing this, and there's nothing really else to say. To everybody that is probably gonna hate me for this, I'm sorry, and I had to do it. My mind just snapped. I couldn't control it anymore. That's it. Fuck you to the big world. Fuck everybody in the world. I can't stand this place.
He said that he was contemplating suicide in the video, and he knew that he would have to pay the consequences for what he had done. Richard decided that he should probably get out of there at this point, 4 days fucking later. And at around 3:45 a.m. on Friday, September 18th, he stole Mark's car and attempted to make his way to the Richmond airport. Clearly, he was unable to make it super far because there are multiple reports filed in the same area from the homeowner who lived on Poorhouse Road in Farmville, who called the police around 4 a.m. on September 18th to report that they had a car stuck in the ditch at the end of their driveway.
Wow.
Okay, this gets worse because for whatever reason, Richard decides, let me just camp out by this car. You know what? This is giving Eileen Wuornos vibes after her and Tyria slammed into the ditch and decided to fucking wait by their car for whatever reason.
But at the same time, who would think that somebody was up at 4 a.m. or 3:45 to see them stuck in the ditch? You
Yeah,
would think they
that's
were
true.
sleeping,
But, like,
and he's
why would he
20
stay?
and he's irrational. And
But, like, for what reason would he stay? Why wouldn't he just start hoofing it, is my question.
I don't know how far it is, or he doesn't know where he's at.
I don't know. Go live in the forest like a feral person that you are.
Right? Just go
I'm
somewhere.
judging. I'm mad.
I mean, I guess what you're saying, like, honestly, at that point, he would want to go somewhere away from there.
You would think. Thank
Okay.
God he's kind of dumb. For whatever reason, he stayed with the car long enough for the cops and a tow truck to show up, and he was given a ticket, actually, for driving without a license.
Given a ticket by who?
The cop.
The cop can't give him a ticket without running his ID and saying that he's not the person who owns the car.
At this point, the bodies were still undiscovered, so when Richard told the deputy that the car was his girlfriend's dad's car, it was just more of an inconvenience to the cop than a red flag, because nobody knows the bodies are dead, and that's how he wrote it off.
Okay, that makes sense, because,
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way for a cop to know any different.
Exactly.
They don't have time to try to
Like,
play detective on every...
hyper-investigate.
Yeah.
Yeah. At some point during the conversation between the deputy and Richard, it had come out that Richard was due to return home to California the next day on the 19th. Obviously, Richard no longer had reliable transportation because his car was currently in a ditch. So Elon Napier, the tow truck driver, offered to give Richard a ride.
That's quite common.
Yeah.
I mean, the tow truck guys, like,
I've
generally
gotten
always
that.
help. Yeah, they've
Yeah.
helped me in the past.
Yeah, they're super nice. Richard asked to go to the gas station, and I'm not really sure how the cop missed the smell, but Elton sure didn't. He was so disgusted and told the media, quote, he stunk like the devil, unquote. And he reported that he had to physically hold his head out of the window to avoid gagging on the smell, and that, quote, he had never experienced such a terrible smell in his life, unquote.
Well, to be fair, he's in a closed, small
Yes.
environment with the tow truck driver. The cops do not stand that close to anybody for that reason. Like,
Yeah.
if they smelled a little bit of a smell, they're probably like, this dude needs to shower. And they walk
True.
off. They're not like, let me sit in the car with him and close the door and sniff.
Sniff him out, yeah. Richard spent time at the gas station just kind of plotting out his next move and decided that his best next option should be to camp out at the Richmond International Airport through the evening of Friday the 18th, so that way he could catch his flight on the 19th.
Wow. Did she work?
Debra? Yeah. She was
did-
a
3 days.
professor.
So were they not calling?
I was wondering about that.
Because we're during the week here. That'd be a little strange because now that you're saying that, she has classes to teach, which is very important. Like, you don't just not show up.
Maybe it was fall break because they had the time to be able to go and take the kids.
Maybe.
So I'm wondering if it was something like that, or she had intentionally taken the time off because
Maybe
she knew.
Yeah, maybe she told them, give me 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. His
Okay.
flight's on the 19th. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's the only thing I could think of. So he called a taxi. That way he could get to the airport. That's what I'm saying. This bitch knew how to call a freaking cab. So he could have just
left when he was mad that night. Like, he
Yeah.
could have just left from the event to begin with.
And he could
Or
be
just
high
hooked up
and
with
drunk.
another girl there. I'm sure there were plenty.
Yeah, like there are girls who have a whole redhead thing and they love that shit. So like, shut up. Anyway, so the taxi driver who just so happened to pick him up was named Curtis Gibson, and he described the odor as quote unquote foul. And exactly like the tow truck driver, he had to open the taxi windows to keep from gagging. However, Richard, quote, spoke calmly and never raised any suspicion, unquote. So clearly the smell was basically just chalked up to god-awful personal hygiene. According to Curtis, Richard told him, quote, Emma became angry with him when she had caught him going through her phone and accused him of invading her privacy. So McCroskey claimed that he didn't want to argue with her anymore and wanted to go home, unquote. Considering the fact that he was in a busy airport, there were a multitude of people who encountered Richard during his escape attempt, and they all had a really similar sentiment, basically stating that the odor was akin to that of, quote, rotting flesh, unquote. And to make things so much worse, Richard had not bathed or changed his clothes since the attack several days earlier and was caked in gore.
Okay, I just don't understand that one because obviously he's in someone's home and they have a washer and dryer. And if he's trying to keep himself from being noticed,
Yeah.
you would think he wouldn't care about being naked in a house where nobody sees him for 2 or 3 hours while he washes his clothes and takes a shower to get blood off of him.
I almost wonder if it's not, I don't want to say a fetish, but some sort of like trophy, like, oh, this is what I did, let me like remember it, and something kind of weird like that.
I feel like maybe that, but at the same time he didn't want to leave witnesses. If he didn't want to leave witnesses,
That's true.
it doesn't match with him leaving witnesses all over him.
Ew. That's a very good point and a very horrible way of saying it. Oh, it was
I'm
so
sorry.
Okay.
It's contradicting.
It is.
Like,
I
if you don't
agree.
want to leave anything, then get in the dang shower and bleach yourself down and bleach them clothes and whatever and clean yourself. Otherwise, like, this doesn't make sense.
It just makes it really, really fucking obvious and more attention grabbing. He set up his little sleepover party in the baggage claim area. Meanwhile, Kathleen was still super concerned after waiting all night for Mark to call her and tell her that Melanie was okay, because remember, he said, everything's chill, let me get to their house and I'll call you when I find everyone alive and well. So Kathleen's like, all right, bitch, it's been a while, where are you? When word never came, Kathleen called the Farmville cops again and had them return to Debra and Emma's house for another welfare check. The cops showed up to the home around 3:20 on the 18th to an unlocked door and the smell of death and an obvious lack of Richard.
Ugh.
Alarm bells raised, and they used the stench as probable cause to enter the home, thank God. It wasn't long before the police were able to find the 3 sources of the smell, and once they were able to obtain an official search warrant and search the whole home, they found the 4th body upstairs. It wouldn't be until September 21st that the bodies of Mark Niederbrock, Debra, Kelley, Emma, and Melanie Wells would be formally identified. The scene was so gruesome, and the only detail provided by the police was that the victims had died from blunt force trauma. But, okay, so this is what I was saying. The details were too upsetting to be made public. Officials at the crime scene referred to the setting as that of a slaughterhouse, and police got to work on apprehending this fucking psycho who did this. One of the officers was able to give helpful information pretty quickly, as he remembered seeing Richard there the day before when he was the one who answered the door, and was able to confirm Richard's identity based on a photo. He confirmed that Richard was the man who had told them that the ladies were out at a movie, and further research into the home and social media pointed to Richard at the very least being in the home with them, but obviously was no longer chilling there, so the manhunt for Richard was officially declared. Another officer who had given Richard a ticket after he ran Mark's car into a ditch realized that he had spoken with the killer, and he was able to reach out to fellow officers and basically inform them that Richard did in fact have plans to go home to California.
That's good.
Thank God Richard's got loose lips too.
Right.
The next morning on the 19th, Richard McCroskey was arrested while sleeping in the baggage claim area and was immediately charged with the murder of Mark Niederbrock, grand larceny for stealing Mark's car, and robbery for taking money from his wallet. He was later indicted on 6 charges of first-degree murder, the extra 2 charges due to the intense brutality involved.
Is that date correct? Because you said they didn't.
Yeah, so the 19th was when he was arrested, but the 21st, like, they had to send the bodies out, but they were so fucked up that it took until the 21st to get it official.
Okay, let's talk about the Horrorcore dilemma. Nobody in the immediate families of these people went unscathed, including Richard's family. Before the news of the murders even broke, Richard's sister Sarah had a horrible feeling about what was to come when on September 17th, Richard left a message on the family answering machine saying that he wanted to make sure that, quote, everyone was okay, end quote. Before he hung up, he said, quote, I love you guys, end quote, which was incredibly out of character for him. Sarah's suspicions were confirmed when news of Richard's arrest came. Sarah said to the Mercury News, quote, I just fell to my knees. I couldn't see. I couldn't talk. I feel I failed as his big sister, end quote. The press quickly began calling it, quote, the Horrorcore Murders, end quote, or the Juggalo Murders. And McCroskey's parents and even Emma's parents had expressed concerns over the violence in their children's favorite new music. But Sarah insisted that the music had nothing to do with the slayings. The Insane Clown Posse, or ICP, are considered a pioneer of horrorcore music, and their massive fan base are called Juggalos and Juggalettes. Juggalos were labeled a loosely organized hybrid gang in the FBI's 2011 National Gang Threat Assessment. I did not know that.
Oh, yeah.
News to me.
It's fucked up.
The report stated, quote, transient criminal juggalo groups pose a threat to communities due to the potential for violence, drug use or sales, and their general destructive and violent nature, end quote. While it's true that a lot of the music is very violent and in line with the horrorcore genre, I always
genre.
ignore that word. My whole life I've ignored that word.
But genre?
Why do they spell it like that? See, this is my problem with English. I'm letting you know. This is why at a young age I was like, this is bullshit.
This is why fuck English.
Can somebody make the shit right?
Yeah.
While it's true that a lot of the music is very violent and in line with the horrorcore genre, Juggalos say that they aren't about literal violence. Despite the FBI report, which highlighted a handful of minor crimes committed by fans of the Insane Clown Posse as, quote, sporadic, disorganized, individualistic, end quote. I'm just going to throw this out there that there are crimes happening with people listening to every single kind of music. I'm sure if we tried, we could find people in every single genre there is that have hurt people or minor crimes. That could be anything like a speeding ticket.
Yeah, like shut up. I'm very opinionated on this because I knew a lot of juggalos and juggalettes when I went through my phase. And they're like the sweetest fucking people I met. There were like 2 that I was like, okay, you're a really bad image for this little squad here.
So the band sued the Justice Department and FBI over the gang classification in January of 2014, saying it had adversely affected juggalos and demanded that the juggalos be removed from the gang threat assessment list. Quote, there were only 2 crimes that were cited by the FBI study back in 2011. One had to do with a violent home invasion where a juggalo was suspected and later convicted, and there was another violent crime associated in 2012. But as lawyers pointed out, this doesn't apply to every person who claims he or she is a juggalo. It isn't fair just because this group depicts violent images, talks about very crude murder scenarios, end quote. Juggalos say their real culture is one that seeks to upend class hierarchies while building a community founded upon familial bonds. Most juggalos assert that their community is more about peace and love than the violent lyrics would imply. They have gatherings like any other popular genre of music would, where they paint their faces and get sprayed with Faygo and just have a good time. Based on the research, they don't hire outside security. They just hire other juggalos, which most say make them feel safer.
Which makes sense.
That's a lot to say. Like, you're basically policing your own community.
And saying, I don't feel safe with the police, so let me hire one of my own.
Yeah, you're just holding your own responsible.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, ICP has a very long history of helping charity, including donating to Toys for Tots, Make-A-Wish, and food drives. There's really a lot of charitable fundraisers that ICP has done on their own without people pushing them, so it's really not fair to say.
Yeah.
When ICP found out that one fan was terminally ill and was a huge fan, they flew out to meet him, kept in contact, became friends, and when the man passed away, they dedicated a concert with a $20 ticket price to him and insisted on helping his family however they could.
That gives me chilly willies every time I read it.
I know, like, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Jessie Jane Doe, a juggalette from Pennsylvania, was quoted as saying to Insider, quote, to me at least, there's no level of love and community and just people being able to safely and happily be themselves, however weird or different it might be, than what I experience at any ICP show, end quote. With all of that in mind, obviously there will be a handful of juggalos who will take it too far, as there are in many other fan bases. So, performers, members, and fans of the horrorcore and juggalo subcultures were quick to respond to news stories that aimed to blame the genre for Richard's sick actions, saying that no sane member of the subculture would actually enact the sometimes terrifying lyrics in the real world. Some might argue that the murders would never have happened if Emma Niederbrock's parents had not been so tolerant of her interest in horrorcore rap, the culture, and her online boyfriend, Richard McCroskey. But it isn't really fair to assume that the music did anything to him, especially if he was educated in what the groups that he listened to really stood for. If anything, he should have realized that they would have denounced his actions.
All right, so the dog woke up, by the way, guys, so you're going to hear a lot of that in the background.
I'm sorry about the puppy Labrador.
She's just excited. Okay, we'll post pictures of how cute she is. Maybe that'll make you forgive her.
I know, I'm so sorry. Richard reportedly said to a reporter who asked him why he had done what he did, quote, Jesus made me do it, end quote, which completely contradicts with the very basis of the horrorcore argument.
I want to say that I read an article, too, that his sister was like, yeah, he was just being a shithead. He said that to get a rise out of you, which sounds right.
At the end of the day, the music had nothing to do with this immature and violent reaction to feeling slighted by the girl that he thought reciprocated his feelings in his fantasy world, and he felt the need to punish her for it. Again, he's the adult.
You should know.
She's the innocent child.
Yeah, she's just online having fun, okay?
And she's acting like a 16-year-old. When she goes and talks to other boys because you lied to her, she's acting the same way any other 16-year-old would do. Because I see it in my head when I was 16. I saw my daughter, every one of her friends, like, forget you. You're a liar. I'm off. So let's talk about court and prison. Richard McCroskey, at the age of 21, was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of capital murder. Richard was appointed a public defender, Carrie Bowen, who insisted that Richard take a plea deal in lieu of the trial and the death sentence that would likely come with it. I think any good public defending attorney would suggest that their clients, at this point, take anything that they'll offer.
Yeah.
So, Richard pleaded guilty in the Prince Edward County Circuit Courtroom on all 4 charges, taking a plea bargain. He could have been given the death penalty, but was given life in prison instead on September 20th, 2010. McCroskey's family did not attend the hearing. That's interesting.
That's right. Rub that salt.
Even
in
the
that wound.
sister, Sarah?
Yep.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Prince Edward County Commonwealth's attorney, Jim Ennis, said of Richard's motive for the murders, quote, "I think he had a certain expectation of the relationship with Emma Niederbrock. What it was going to be like after a year on the computer, and it did not turn out to be what he imagined it was going to be like."
I think that perfectly sums up this whole situation and case, to be honest.
I just cannot fault these parents. I cannot fault the music. If I'm playing devil's advocate, I am a parent, and my kids went through so many different types of music and still do. My older son makes music himself, and I listen to it, and I'm like, I don't know about that, but I'm proud of you.
Yeah,
like,
you do
okay.
you. Mommy loves you. Like,
and that's a generational thing, right? Because,
yeah.
Every generation we're like, oh my goodness, what are they doing now?
Your dad listens. Hi, uncle. And he's like, why are you saying fuck so much?
Totally, my dad listened. And
Hi there.
yeah, and he was like, honey, do you think that you should be using curse words in there, you and Shay?
Fuck yeah, I do.
Bless his heart.
I know.
But he listened. I mean, even in, his old set ways, he still listened to the entire...
That's a 10 out of 10 dad supportive moment. We love that.
Yeah, we love that. And then he was like, I can't find how to rate it. I was like, Dad, yeah. Thank you for listening. I can show you how to find that.
At least we got the listens.
I just feel absolutely horrible for this family. Like,
yeah, fuck this guy, dude.
I mean, like, did we ever see, like, any other family there for this hearing? Like, because basically he killed this whole family and they moved to where they were at. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing they had to be separate from any family they had.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything about the Niederbrock family showing up. Well, I don't know, because everyone handles grief so different. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak on it because I didn't see anything about it.
My heart goes out to both families.
Absolutely.
Both. Because just because he killed them doesn't mean his family had anything to do with it. And I feel pain inside. As a mother myself, I feel pain as a sister. Mm-hmm. I feel pain as a daughter. I feel pain for all of these people on both sides, and people tend to not think about the murderer's family, but they're going through the same horror.
They're victims in their own right. It's a ripple effect. It does not affect just the person murdering and the murderer. It extends the whole community. Further. Absolutely.
It's sad. So, I mean, like, I know this country is really on a mission of if you see something, say something.
Yes.
If, you see that something's not normal, say something. And, it takes a village to raise these kids, and hopefully someone will see something.
We're going to have to put that on a fucking t-shirt. It takes a village.
It takes a village.
I think in every episode we've said, it takes a village.
It honestly does.
It does. That's our takeaway. It takes a freaking village, guys.
It takes a village, man. We've got to get together and be that village because...
We should call our community the Village People and then get sued by the band.
And you need your kids to be exposed to all different types of people, even if you're not like that. You got to be open-minded.
Our little villagers.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. And if you like the content like this, please feel free to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're currently listening and leave a review on either Podchaser, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. It really helps us to figure out what is working for you and what you want to see changed. You can follow us on Instagram, where we post content daily, update. Our DMs on Instagram are always open if you want to offer suggestions, story ideas, or just say hi. We respond to everybody because we love our little community that you guys helped us build. That's right, our little village of Mysterions. We love you all. We also have a website, CX3podcast.com. That has our blog. It has backlogged episodes. There will be more random stuff on there. We'll put the link to the video that I can't wait to watch of this boy.
Yes.
Later on in other episodes, we'll have pictures and some live footage of different areas around where certain things happened.
And we'll put, when we do live streams on Instagram, we'll record them and put them on there as well.
Yeah.
I also want to give a huge shout out to the creator of the show Talk Murder to Me. I definitely slid in her DMs and said thank you so much for being a wealth of knowledge. So you guys should really go and listen to her podcast. It's really good.
What's it called? Talk Murder with Me?
Yes.
Awesome.
And her blog is super detailed as well. So check it out, guys. Otherwise, have a spooky day. Stay safe and always watch back.
We'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.